The two procurement nerds are back. I feel like we're jet setters again. We had a little slow streak and now we're back on the road.
Back on the road.
So we are recording on Monday, September 8th. Our episode will be released on Wednesday, September 10th. And we love when we get requests from our listeners. And we've had a few come in recently, so we felt it was time to address one of them. This is actually from a listener in Australia. So shout out to our Australian friends. And she requested that we talk about skills procurement people will need to evolve. And one of her, I don't know if I would say concerns in her note to me, but she was more just wanting to prepare herself as to what should she do to look out for herself in her career in the next 3 to 5 years, and then also how to be a better leader and manager, how to better prepare her team so people have the right skills so they don't become obsolete and unemployable. So, Dr. Elouise, lots to unpack here. And I think, I'll just kind of set the stage stating the obvious, but AI is transforming procurement and supply chain operations in every single aspect, no matter if you are entry level, if you're mid-level, if you're senior. And I personally think we're already starting to see a focus on transactional to strategic procurement, which is heavily driven by AI. And procurement professionals need to evolve and they need to level up and they need to learn AI and learn it quickly. So that's how I'll kind of level set and open the discussion for today.
Which is a great place to start. And I'm going to go deeper here just on that tactical to strategic, because what has become abundantly clear, I had some downtime this summer and allowed my brain to recalibrate, is you think about our traditional source to pay and all the associated processes with that. The way to think about that is all of those systems and the processes and the work that people do in and around source to pay, fully AI automated. At some point, it'll just be some black box. I say that laughing because I know it'll probably take like 2 decades to get there, but eventually that how we buy in the corporate environment will become Amazonified. I've used air quotes on that, or but it's how we used to describe it a couple of years ago, or it's a black box or whatever it is. But everything that the most procurement organizations do today, just think about that as becoming AI, an AI factory with a few human minders that sort of look for exceptions and whatnot. So that is the tactical. So everything that's tactical today, see ya, goodbye. Now, again, might take 20 years and I'll be long retired or teaching history or something else, but there's no doubt that that's happening, and it's happening today. The building blocks, I should say, are happening today. It's not nowhere near production ready. Now, then, if we're going to get more strategic, and I fully believe for procurement, it's a huge opportunity for us. What we have to think about is that we are part of the business, or to say it a different way, if we're going to be strategic, we then become part of the business. And that means we need to operate and have skills and bring capabilities to the business that they wouldn't necessarily have. And so when I think about the skills, I'm less concerned about any of that transactional side and 1,000,000% dialed into the sort of what we do to level up and become that strategic, or I would just even, it might be just simpler to say business focused, business execution.
And I think it's important to note that right now, it's highly unlikely that senior leadership is going to come to you and say, here are all the things you need to do to be more strategic. This is your time to own it. Go figure out what you need to know and learn how to be strategic and build a business case and go to your senior management and say, here's where I want to take our organization, or here's some of the things that I think we should be doing that we're not doing. And here's the business impact. Because those who wait and sit around for somebody to tell them what to do to how to be more strategic, your job's going to be gone. So you have to be proactive and figure out how to do that and then sell that internally.
Yeah, I love that point, and I would add to it a little bit in that I actually don't think the CPOs and leaders, I'm trying to be delicate, I say this, they're not the ones that are going to see this transition through. So the most important people I see today are the ones that run the centers of excellence, the ones that run very strategic categories.
I
If
would put
you're,
finance into that bucket.
yeah, yeah,
Very important stakeholder for procurement.
and so it's the folks that are doing that work today, not necessarily the leaders, because you're right, the leaders aren't here to push. The leaders aren't going to push that transition because it will largely happen after most of them retire, and that's not meant to be pejorative. It's just sort of a fact. So the and as you said, the other point that I really like is you got to own your own journey on this, because the good news is there's nothing stopping you, and there's plenty of folks to see, like uh, BT Sourced and Vodafone. The reason I featured them in my books is that they, I think, as an organization, they're operating this way, or as individual organizations, and I think that those same lessons can be applied to anybody in any procurement organization today.
So I have a list of core skills that I've prepared that I'd like to go through, and because I want to make sure that we really address her specific question around
Absolutely.
we're kind of laying the groundwork here, but I want to make sure we don't get too off topic and we're actually talking about specific skills that you and I feel somebody needs to go figure out and learn. So my first bucket is data and digital literacy.
Hmm.
And what this means to me, people can define these things differently, is that you are comfortable with AI,
Yep.
analytics, and digital procurement platforms. Not that you're an expert in everything, but you're very comfortable with how they work, what the purpose is, and diving in and figuring out how to use those things. The
Can I
second,
just interject on these?
yeah.
Because I actually, and I don't mean to sound one note on on generations, but uh, like in my entire career, I have watched a lot of data illiteracy and a lot of, oh, dashboards, wow. But like anybody that does data or analytics understands very quickly that that's like dashboards are nothing. They're silly, and we're moving beyond them. And so you have to have this data fluency and this comfort with data. Now, I do think the younger generations, and I'd put millennials, which I know you're part of, you've been immersed in data in a much different way than those of us that are over certain ages, and I'll say 45, 50, because we didn't grow up with data in the same way. And uh, it just, data has been so much in the news for the last 15, 20 years. So anyway, just want to interject that.
Yeah, and I'll throw in there that I see a challenge with AI is that it's bringing too much data to the forefront
Yeah.
because there's almost information overload with alerts for absolutely everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think one of the things that is part of this being comfortable with data and having literacy is around figuring out how to build processes and systems, or partnering with the right suppliers where they're bringing forward the information that actually matters and then knowing how to action it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think that's a really important skill, because we can all be chasing the next shiny object or the next data alert, but does it really matter, and is it worth your time?
Yep.
And then understanding the data enough to be able to leverage it to make better decisions. So again, we have data that's being surfaced, we're looking at it, but what does that actually mean? What are we going to do with it? How are we going to drive the business forward? All right, my next bucket is AI collaboration and prompting skills. And to me, this means I call it knowing how to partner with AI. So how to use it as a productivity tool, how to use it as an enabler to do your job faster and better. And something that I am constantly improving and figuring out how to do better is writing effective prompts. So figuring out how to actually ask AI to do the right thing and ask it the right questions, I think, is really important. Also, in this bucket is, I think, really important is knowing where human judgment is still essential.
Mhm.
So we have one other end of the spectrum where you have folks using AI to do literally everything, and there's no review process, there's no oversight, and you're spitting out things that are highly likely to have errors and be false and not necessarily relevant to what you're looking for. So you know how to partner, but then know how to critically think and understand what AI is spitting out.
I want to amplify a couple of points. So on the, I would add into your sort of, I love partner with AI, learn how to partner better with AI, because actually I would include not only prompt writing, but agent building in that. And the folks that have seen me present lately know that I talk about every employee, a manager of agents, and everybody will have 20 agents working for them. And so the question is, and building the agents, much like the prompting, I mean, you can just get AI to build the agents for you, or even to improve your prompts. So the question, so it's not so much the technical part, but, and I liked how you framed that, how do I partner with and
Yeah.
leverage the AI? And you used a term that I've been really focused on is productivity tools. And I think there's a mental shift we have to make, that true AI tools, we won't be using Word or Excel or PowerPoint. I say that, and I know because I've been doing this long enough that I will regret saying that, because I'll probably be wrong. But when I look at Notebook LM or some of these other fit for purpose tools, or even these AI video generators, you could start to see that I don't need to go and write a script in Word to then feed it to ChatGPT to then, like, all of that, like those productivity tools are going to move out of the old way and into the sort of these newer platform approaches. I don't know exactly what that looks like, other than say something like Notebook LM, but or the video generators, but I think we're very close there.
Yeah. Yeah, and your point about using, I think you mentioned 3 or 4 in your example. Now we can cut down and almost use AI as kind of a one-stop to
Yeah.
do 5 things at once
Yes.
instead of using so many different tools. Now, I would debate you. I don't know that Excel in my lifetime is ever going to go away.
Yeah,
And
that'll be the last one. SAP will be long dead and buried, and Excel will still be there. Like, Yeah, anyway, the only thing that will kill Excel once and for all is a massive electromagnetic pulse.
One of the most brilliant creations of our lifetime is Excel and how obsessed and ingrained it has become in the business culture.
I seriously, and look, yeah, it will be there. There's no doubt. I agree with you.
All right, next skill bucket, ethical and responsible AI use.
Hmm.
And this is really, really hard right now because it's kind of the Wild West with different reasoning models and companies still trying to figure out what their ethics are going to be. Meta offering hundreds of millions or billions of dollars per people to join their team. So I think this is still a lot to be figured out here. But as procurement practitioners, I think we have to play our part in ensuring fairness and transparency in AI driven supplier decisions, and addressing bias in supplier selection and contract management.
Hmm.
So again, I think a lot of the RFP supplier selection, running your formal bid and looking at the market will be automated, but I do think there is a human element in actually looking at and assessing the data and incorporating this piece in the criteria process.
Yep, couldn't agree more on that one.
Supplier relationship management in an AI era. I queued that up nicely. For me, I think a couple skills here that are going to be really important is building trust while AI handles routine communications. So, having that human element and that human component with your suppliers while automating a lot of the more transactional kind of day to day work. But building that trust so you are that priority, you get the intel and the insider information. Your suppliers have a wealth of knowledge, and leveraging and tapping into that, I think, is really important and will set you apart from your competitors. And using AI to scale supplier engagement without losing that human touch, I think, are going to be two really important skills in this area.
All right, so I'm gonna hit three things if I can remember them all. On your last bit, I would also add greater data integration through the AI, or at least data exchange, so that we're not emailing Excel spreadsheets back and forth. So that's one bit. Second, the supplier relationship management. I think of that as a big umbrella of anything related to suppliers, whether it's inviting them to sourcing events, or paying them, or engaging with them, or measuring performance. And so when we talked about that strategic bit and being embedded with the business, that's the work broadly. That big umbrella of SRM is what we're going to be doing with in that strategic procurement, or at least that's what I would argue. And then your third point about sort of the ethical AI, I completely agree with you. I also think, or what I would add to that, because I don't disagree, but I do think there's got to be and there will be national standards or sort of international standards. And by that I mean like the EU. China's made a lot of progress in this. Other countries, the US, I'm not sure what, if anything, will do, since most of our politicians are too old to even know what AI is. But uh, so I do think we have to, so there will be a cascade from these legislative bodies, both national and international, that will help drive and guide that. Um, so.
Yes, but we've got to take as much as we can on ourselves and within our organizations, because sitting around waiting for regulation, who knows, right? What's going to happen and where it's going to go. So I think companies can do their part to set policies and set their own practices.
Yes.
As much as
It's both. It is absolutely both. And I acknowledge the regulatory things will take decade at least. Just like they have with sustainability. Sustainability feels like it's been debated and everything else forever. So yeah,
and comes in and out of popularity every few years.
every few years.
All right, my next skill category is negotiation and strategic thinking. So this could be a little controversial, but I'm going to say leveraging AI for scenario planning, I think is very relevant and very important, but keeping negotiation creativity human. And I would argue that some people feel that is is not true and not relevant with the rise of reverse auctions, for example. I've seen that really come back into popularity in the last 12 to 18 months. When I started in procurement, wasn't really a thing. I didn't see it happening very much, but I'm definitely hearing more about it and seeing more companies do that. And then focusing on strategy, risk management, and long-term value. So trying to plan out ahead, what are we going to see in 2 years, 3 years from now, versus just looking at, 2, 3, 4 months ahead.
Yeah, I just parenthetically, my career started with reverse auctions, and then I watched them dip, and that's probably when you kind of came in, and then I agree they've reemerged, and I do think that negotiations ultimately procurement's value is in the ability both sort of cost or margin protection through cost negotiations, but also supply assurance. And I think both of those things take are different ends of the negotiation spectrum, but whatever you can do to understand negotiations, I think is really important.
And I will say that I do think procurement can actually be a revenue generator. And
No doubt, no doubt.
I have friends who have come up with brilliant business models in which procurement actually was able to drive significant revenue for a company. So really, really keep that in the back of your mind. And as you're working with suppliers and understanding where your company's going and their innovation and roadmap, try to think about how you can add value by actually creating a new source of revenue for the company. And it's not impossible.
Yeah, this was this has come in and out. It doesn't like go out of favor. It just the opportunities. But I've seen quite a number of these over the years where instead of spending money, you can actually on things like waste removal. You can turn those into opportunities, and this gets back to revenue generating opportunities. And this gets back to my point about thinking like the business, how procurement can bring that top line growth mentality into its operations.
Well, and think about if you have warehouses and you have extra space, are there
There you
suppliers you
go.
partner with? If you have a manufacturing line, can you sell services if you have downtime in your schedule? Can you partner with AWS? Can you sell things online? I mean, there's just so many different avenues that you can look at from a revenue generation standpoint.
Well, and I'll even go, and this was not my idea of a CPO who's now retired. He worked at a very large financial institution, and financial institutions, their biggest spend, in fact, predominantly other than facilities, is on services, IT services, namely. And and so he and his team were really, really like world class. I don't know, I hate to use that term, but world class in sourcing services. And he was talking to a manufacturer that was really good at sourcing goods, but they were terrible at services. And he was in discussions with them to maybe have his team do services because that manufacturer had, I'm making this number up, like $1 billion
Mhm.
in services spend, but their other categories was like, I don't know, another 30 billion. So the 1 billion in services had a lot of opportunity, but it was not a focus for that manufacturer's procurement. So his idea was, oh, well, I have a team that can just knock this out. So he was having discussions. Um, then COVID hit, and then he retired. So, but the opportunities are there.
Mhm. All right, my last skill bucket, core skill, is cybersecurity and risk awareness. So I now work in the IT space, and when you look at data and research and where organizations are still spending money in 2025, cybersecurity top of the list. Organizations are investing heavily. It's a huge focus and priority for boards and for executive leadership, and it's continuing to get funding even as other budget line items are going away. So if you want to have budget and stay relevant, understand how AI intersects with supplier data security. I think that's a role that procurement can play, and stay involved and build relationships with your security stakeholders. And new risks from AI enable fraud or counterfeit detection are real. And there's a whole class now of bad actors that are emerging, and they're using AI as the what I call vector or the fraud into an organization. So if you can understand that and learn that and add value in that area, I think that's something that will make you really, really valuable and relevant and high priority over others in the organization that don't have awareness around that topic.
And I want to underscore that because and expand upon that because the greatest threat to any organization is through the third parties. So your suppliers, mainly your suppliers. And while big enterprise might have board level objectives and spends a lot of time and money doing cybersecurity, guess who doesn't do a lot of that and who doesn't have resources? Your end tier suppliers. And so, and I'm very vociferous on this point, is if I want to attack big enterprise, why would I go attack the enterprise? I would just go down the chain of suppliers and find a weakness and then ride it all the way up to big enterprise. So absolutely is a core uh,
Skill.
capability skill. Thank you. I lost it. Yeah. And the cybersecurity training, quote unquote, that we take it, like that's not what we mean. Like you really have to focus on this and understand this because the digital world is becoming very unsafe, and you can't just hide behind, oh, I didn't know. So yeah, it's guaranteed over the next 10 years, this is going to be a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about the deep fakes who are just frauding people by impersonating voices,
Yeah,
right? Somebody calls your mom and says, pretends it's you. I need, $200. I'm stuck, or I am having I mean, there's just so many things now where people are going after the public, and just imagine the impact at volume when you're going after an organization.
yeah. Um, all right, so I want to add a few because you inspired a couple for me as I was thinking as we're going through this. And because you work in IT, I think one of the, and we've done, I think we did 2 episodes so far on data centers, which who knew data centers were so interesting? But I do think that in a world where technology is going to be the differentiator, having access to, let's call it infrastructure or data center infrastructure, and more importantly, electricity. I think
Mhm.
those are going to be, those are tangential, but I do think we got to stay ahead of what's happening in the IT space. Because even if if you again go back to that manufacturer I was talking about, like what does a manufacturer need with AI? Well, there's a whole bunch of cybersecurity, and oh, by the way, if you're going to have all this AI and power consumption, and there are a lot of tertiary issues. And so this is where I think when we talk about being strategic and part of the business, it's thinking multi-dimensional about these various issues. That it's not just cybersecurity, it's not just data centers, it's not just electricity, it's how they all intersect and sort of thinking beyond because we've just been in such linear
Mhm.
ways of working and
The world, the world and economy is very circular.
yeah,
We must not
exactly.
forget that.
Exactly. And then the other one that I talk about a lot is, well, so in that bucket, I would add sort of critical thinking, developing critical thinking skills, and network thinking. So I was using that N-tier supplier of your supplier, supplier, supplier. So thinking just in those different ways. But the other way is communication and the way we communicate as a global society is all visual now. That's why YouTube and TikTok and Netflix and all these are so powerful. And maybe not in your generation, definitely not in my generation, but these younger generations communicate through memes and these animated GIFs and all these other ways. It's all visual media, and it doesn't mean we can abandon written, but we do have to understand that there's a difference. And then again, talking about this intersections with other capabilities, we were talking about AI content creation, and I believe we're going to do an episode on AI content creation here
Yes.
before too long. But there's some really engaging AI generated content, which is just wild. And um, and so thinking about that, like that does in terms of communication, we have to think about what that means. And quite a number of YouTube videos now I find are using AI voices. And once I detect it, I turn them off because it's like you got to either be upfront about that or don't do it. So
Well, there's even podcasts now that are
yeah.
AI generated, right? I think we played one during the holidays. I think I had the 5-minute Santa Claus one, and somebody had Santa Claus give their holiday podcast, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's absolutely AI.
Yeah. So thinking about that. So again, one of the things I have seen procurement fail at is supplier communication. Just whole scale failure. And I don't like to be critical like that. And I'm not blaming anybody for this. The tools, the approaches have just been like we haven't really given it the same level of strategic thought and effort. But when you start doing that, I think because again, I like to go to corporate sites and look at their supplier information because it's all on the public internet on their public sites. It's like the communication is just very terrible. So anyway, so I think these issues come to the forefront in these new skill sets.
So I think this kind of is another bucket I think we should dive into a little bit is what I call the human skills
Yes.
that I think will grow in value, right? We talked about some of the core procurement skills, but I think there's a whole nother category with human skills. And to me, there's a few things that fall into this. And you mentioned critical thinking. I also think it's important to tie that into questioning AI outputs and assumptions.
Hmm.
I think change management is another really important skill that's going to grow in value when we have so much changing with AI and coming in and just kind of reshaping organizations, being able to lead a team through that is really important. It's going to be, I think, an essential skill set, especially if you want to move up in your career, into a more senior role. And then emotional intelligence
Yeah.
So navigating relationships that AI can't necessarily replicate. So you mentioned relationships with suppliers. I would argue relationships with stakeholders, relationship with your leadership team. And then another one that is just really important to me being a marketer is storytelling
Yes.
and being able to explain AI driven insights in a way that people understand, and more importantly, that your leadership team and stakeholders trust.
Yeah. Um, I love this. So by the way, anybody over 40, this is like if you always feel like all this AI and digital and data, like and like you're sort of on the receiving end of that and it feels lonely. This is the area where if you're over 40, you have a lot more to offer because we grew up in eras where human relationships were so much more important and dialed in because that's all we had. We didn't have an internet. We had 6 TV channels or,
And you had a phone book and meeting at trade shows.
exactly. And business cards and all these fax machines, which were a pretty big deal back in the day. So, uh, we had to focus more on relationship, and I 1,000,000% agree with you on this. Is as we AIify everything, get these black boxes, the human relationships will be so much more important. And uh, and let's be honest, we are humans living in a physical world, and so we have to really be good at human relationships and what that means. So I like that last bucket.
I don't have any robots in my house yet. I can't promise that that won't happen in my lifetime, but they're the robots I am hoping will do house cleaning and some of the things that I don't like, but I'll still be able to have the human connection.
I don't know, like those of us that grew up in the 80s and I don't know, maybe for you in the 90s, but like we've watched enough of these like post-apocalyptic. So in our formative years, so there was a movie called Runaway. There was The Terminator, iRobot, which came out, more recently. Her, like when you see this, it's like I don't want any robots in my house. It's like no, no, no. So
I am hoping to purchase, I don't know if we call it a robot, but it's the new mopper slash vacuumer. So you set it to go, it vacuums your floor, and then it mops it. So if that is considered a robot, I am all about it, and I'm hoping to get one this year because definitely not my favorite thing to do.
all right. So there was an article that came out a couple of months ago that there's a rumor that Waymo will sell their autonomous cars to consumers, and I'm like, yes, please. Like I will buy an autonomous car, like so I don't have to
Mhm.
drive. So that I'd be okay. But the car sits outside the
Yeah,
house,
it's
so
not
I'm
it's not in your
freaked
house.
out. Exactly.
All right, so let's close out with a practical next step from each of us for our listeners, right? We've talked about what we think are core procurement skills. We've talked about human skills that we think are going to be really important. What's a practical next step from you, Dr. Elouise, that you want to leave people with?
So just jump in feet first into the AI realm because, and I say this as an old person that, I mean, it takes me forever to learn this stuff. So I don't care if like you're going to use Notebook LM, you're going to build an agent, or you're going to build a series of agents. Again, the broader objective being create 20 personal assistants or AI assistants to help you. What do they do? You can do that, and I want to see everybody jump into that because there's nothing stopping any of us. And in fact, I use this example. Sorry, this is going to go way off topic, but I'll try to make it quick. When when I came of age into the business world, the big book that came out was Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat. And it was basically arguing that with the internet, we now had a flattening of the earth. And I think we have a similar flattening. There's probably a better analogy for that with AI. And I was talking about this in Australia and New Zealand and even in Brazil. Like, there's nothing that, like, with AI, if you, it doesn't matter where you sit, you have the same capabilities to create the next Google or YouTube or whatever else. And all you need is that sort of creativity and the drive and whatever else, maybe a little bit of luck. So we have all this power at our fingertips. So in that realm, jump in and just start doing things.
Mine is build a personal AI playbook. So actually take some time, think about it, map it out, and figure out how to work smarter.